Hit record. All right, it's been a month. How's everybody doing? Good? Bad? Yay, nay, no?
Tired.
Uh-huh.
Pretty good.
You guys realize that you have like, what, 5 weeks left? Wait, 5, 6 weeks left? 5 years? 5 semesters? 5 or 6 weeks?
Like
I think
five.
you can make it. You guys working with Rachel about getting everything done for licensure? Yeah. Competency folios, I really don't know much about those, but those seem to be what everybody stresses about. You guys good on all that? Good. I know a lot of you have sent me your screenshots of your PSYOP and where you've had your final scores. If you didn't, it's okay, you don't have to, but it's always good that you have that one done and can move on. So if you are still working on your PSYOP, remember our goal is April Fool's Day, which is 2 weeks from today, to try to have all that stuff done so that you are well in advance ahead, so you don't have to worry about graduation. Don't have to worry about all of that stuff at the very last minute. How are things going in school? Internships, any of that? Any of you been kicked out of the teacher's lounge yet because you start to talk like you're an administrator? Some of you no, some of you yes. That's the sign that you know you're ready when they kick you out, because you might say, but in all actuality, I really think that it was a good idea. You start talking like you're an administrator.
Or they ask you to start handling more parent issues. They've been passing on the torch of handling things in our grade level. So
was that the administrators passing the torch?
Yeah, they wanted to see how I handled it. So
no, it's opportunities. It's wonderful opportunities that they have for you. Yep. Sometimes we do rock, paper, scissors, even though, you know, we're all administrators. Like, I dealt with that parent last time, you get to deal with that parent this time. Yep. You guys doing the interview circuit, that sort of thing? Those of you that are going to do it? Yep. I think second round in my district is this week. So, yep. It's, I don't know what they're doing for second round. Oh, speed date. Was speed dating first round? No, speed dating's the second round.
Right. First round was writing.
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, I have a teacher that's going through it right now. So she asked me advice on speed dating. That's what we call it. They put principals in the room, and the candidate has like 5 minutes, 7 minutes with each principal, and they may talk to like 15 that day. So we call it speed dating. And my teacher asked me, you know, what do you suggest? I said, have kind of what you stand for, why you want to be an administrator in about 5 minutes or less. Leave them with something. So if you guys are going through that, good luck with all of that. All right, since we've talked, you guys have done a lot of work. And as a lot of you noticed, I spent my Saturday evening grading. That's how I spent my Saturday. I need to get a life, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to all the different videos. I know that may sound crazy and stupid, but I did. I actually enjoy that. One of the parts of this program in this class that frustrates me is that you all aren't together. And so trying to get that collaboration and having those conversations. One group recorded themselves talking about one of the case studies, and it cracked me up because I was like, this sounds like my Monday administrator meetings, or when we have like a big situation going on and we sit down and we talk about it. That's what you do when you're on an administrative staff with just more than just you, even if it's just 2 people. You know, you sort of hear the counselors or even medical doctors will talk about, you know, I staffed this with one of my colleagues. That means that they brainstormed. And so it's been fun listening to you all brainstorm, going back and forth. what would I do here? Should I do that? Would this person be fired? All that kind of stuff. That wasn't one of the requirements, but there was a group that did that, and it was a fun 50 minutes. You guys talked for a long time, but I greatly enjoyed that, and I just kind of smiled. I was like, yeah, I think they're ready. I think they got the good thought process going. So it was great listening to you all talk about your strength finders. So let's start with, there were 2 things that you guys had to do that didn't have to do with case studies. First one was 3 videos. And that is always fun because people don't usually like at least one of them, but it depends on which group and which person doesn't like one of them. Usually they don't like it's not the British guy. There's one of them that you all did not like, and that's okay. You didn't hurt my feelings. But I know it's been a while, so I will refresh your memory. They talked about leadership things. One of the videos, one of the speakers had where there were leadership problems, too little time, people, and power. Remember that little formula he had, like too little time equals. They talked a lot about self-reflection. Now, if you teach in North Carolina, you know that's a part of your the teacher evaluation, your evaluations instrument. It's not necessarily a part of the administrator evaluation system, but it is in the fact that you have to have reflection for growth and to be able to accomplish what the school executive is what it's called, in some of those areas on that instrument. But like you do in your classroom for self-reflection or in your personal life, self-reflection is very important. And I think some self-reflection is that staffing or that talking it out, getting ideas. I know that's hard to think about self-reflection, but that could be, hey, I need some advice on this. This is what I did. Do you think it was okay? What would you have done differently? It's looking back and really coming up with how else could it be done. It talked a lot about you need to know who you are. You need to know like what kind of leader you are. One of the speakers talked about how you need to look at how other people view you. You guys talked a lot about that, about how other people view you. Some groups talked about from just a demographic standpoint, whether you're male, female, young, old, black, white. One group talked about, wow, I never thought about, I've got to think about how people look at me, or whether what are they saying about me? I will tell you that from an age and a gender situation, some of you are young, and that's okay. Some of you will be looked at maybe as an elementary person that now is in secondary. Well, what does she know, or what does he know? Some of you may be looked at from a elective standpoint, and people may not respect you because you won't know what it's like to be in a science class. Now we have our science group. They know what it's like to be in a science class. But they may not know what it's like to be in a kindergarten class. People will try to find areas that they don't feel you live up, whether it's because you didn't teach that level or you didn't teach that subject or whatever. People may discriminate against you from the standpoint of, oh, they don't have kids of their own. Last time I checked, nobody said you had to birth kids or parent or be a father or mother of anybody and be a good administrator. I think through all of life experiences, you gather from those. And nobody says that you have to be old and gray to be a school administrator. Now, you will be old and gray after you become a school administrator. You know, I cover this stuff up. Good thing I'm a blonde. It just blends in. But, I mean, I feel like sometimes it will age you, but I wouldn't give the world, I mean, I love my job, even on the bad days. I was an assistant principal at 27 in a high school, and I looked like I was about 18. So, you know, people are going to find whatever reason they can to pinpoint and to say, I'm sorry, you're not manly enough, or you're not old enough, or you look too nice, or whatever. You have to just kind of ignore that. And I know people have talked to you about having a thick skin, but you absolutely have to have a thick skin. And you have to not let that one or two really get in your head. And as they're talking about the confidence and the self-reflection and all of that, the bottom line is you got to know who you are. You've got to keep remembering why you are doing what you're doing. One of the groups talked about, I understand, oh, Alex didn't join us. I understand there was a meme about Alex's group. There supposedly was a meme about him. You guys remember that? He mentioned it. I was like, I need to see that meme. Did he share it with anybody?
No, but I can imagine.
I know, we need to get that meme. But talked about dealing with adults who aren't doing what they should do. What advice has your site supervisor given you about how to deal with the adult aspect of school administration? Or some of you who are administrators, how have you had to deal with that? Or if you, I mean, some of you may not be administrators, but dealing with adults who aren't doing what they should be doing.
Well, I've found that that's one of the hardest parts. But knowing the policy, what's in the handbook, and being able to use it versus it coming across as a personal thing, like this is what our policy is, this is what is expected, versus it feeling like I need you to do this because I want you to do this, has helped me. I don't know if it's helped the other party, but it's helped me to be able to approach it a little bit better.
It is the worst part of the job. I don't know anybody that went into school administration because they like working with adults. I didn't. I mean, I was complaining last night. Something as simple as, let me know when you're going to be out. And people who are, and you know, they try to be slick about it. I can see that you put in for a sub 3 months ago and you haven't yet told me, and then you come up and try to say it was an emergency. Look, we're not stupid. You will spend 90% of your time, maybe not as an assistant principal. I mean, as an assistant principal, you are sort of kind of boots on the ground, so you will need to deal with it. But you can, that's something you can put on your principal's lap and let your principal deal with it. But as an overall administrator, you will deal with adult issues about 90% of your time, because those adult issues impact student issues. And it's not easy, you know, when you have to look at grown people and say, I just need you to do your job. And they don't understand what their job is. I actually have a classified person that I created a manual. Yes, manual, 3-ring binder manual with pages of screenshots to do his job. And he still couldn't follow it. And you know, one of my funny assistant principals said, where's the manual for my job? I maybe made a gesture to him and told him that was the manual for his job. I mean, they don't hand you manuals for jobs, but I mean, that is one of the most difficult things. So, you know, there was a group that talked about dealing with adults who aren't doing what they should do. My suggestion is just document, document, document. And when you're done, you call whoever you have to call to get permission to write them up, suspend them, whatever. And it's not easy. I mean, I've had a situation where I actually have known the person since the person was 11. I taught the person. The person went to high school when I was an administrator and then came out of college, and we hired her. We thought it was a great hire. And then there were some really boneheaded decisions, some decisions that you thought, you are 26 years old. What made you think that would be okay? You're not in college anymore. Like, that was not a good decision. And I had to make the real difficult choice to turn it over to human resources, because I felt that I had done everything I could and she was not changing. And she no longer has a job with us. And that is not easy. But my philosophy is I'm not going to be on that front page of the paper except for good. I don't want to be on the front page of the paper for some bonehead decision that somebody else made. So it's tough. The assistant principal that worked with me on that situation, she's first year assistant principal, and she just kind of cried. She was like, but that person lost their job. I don't care. They weren't doing their job to begin with, or doing it appropriately. So you have to remember that. There was a lot of conversation in one of the groups about how do you address something that's been done for years but isn't right. And the example was teachers being paid to tutor by current students, and about not having support if you are the administrator to say this is not ethically okay, and not having support from downtown, or I call it the fat cats. And group also talked more about scheduling, and where having maybe how do I want to say it? Not having the right focus for scheduling. That's tough. You know, when you come in, when those of you that are jumping into administration, or those of you that aren't, when you go into a new school, whether you're assistant principal or principal, you just have to start asking questions. You have to start listening. You have to go very slowly about it. You don't want to be a bull in a china shop. Now, if there are things that are very unethical, I'm going to tell you my opinion. Now, I've not worked in that type of situation, so this is not firsthand, but I feel like you don't want to have your name with those unethical practices. You know, it may be that you want to sit down with the principal and say, look, I am not comfortable with this. And if the principal says, well, that's just the way it's always been done, then sometimes you just want to say, well, I can't condone it or support it, so I'm just going to stay out of it. Or you could just say to the teachers, I'm sorry, you cannot tutor for money, not your students, because that is an issue. That is a very big ethical issue. It's tough when you are not the one that is in charge to make the final decision. That is very tough. I'm not going to tell you that that's easy. I think there are different ways you could go about it. But if, you know, downtown or the big wigs know about it and nobody has said anything, sometimes you just kind of have to move on and say, all right, we made sure that people knew about it and they're okay with it, so we're just going to kind of move on. I don't want to say on unethical things you have to pick your battles, because if, you know, you go to your principal and say, hey, I think this teacher's having an inappropriate relationship, I think this teacher's having an inappropriate relationship, you don't necessarily want, and your principal goes, oh, well, you legally cannot just sit back. You have to legally do something about it. But if it's something like charging for tutoring and everybody downtown's aware of it and supports it, that's when you just kind of go, okay, we're going to move on. I'm not okay with that, but when I'm principal, I'll change it. One of the speakers talked about the mental rehearsal, which anytime you're having a difficult conversation, whether it's with staff, whether it's with a parent, if you're having to lead something, at a staff meeting, that mental rehearsal, you need to go through it. You need to feel confident. You need to know what you are going to say. I mean, I sometimes make notes, kind of bullet points of things I don't want to forget. It's very important because sometimes you can get flustered and get kind of tossed around and lose that confidence. So I know it's been a while since you guys watched those videos. Anybody have anything they want to add? All right. You guys are going to have to join in at some point. We're going to talk about strength finders. That was pretty cool, wasn't it? You know how many of you said, I was looking for it to tell me my weaknesses? It's called the strength finder, not the weakness finder. Let me tell you, everybody's going to tell you what your weaknesses are. Everybody. You need to remember what your strengths are, because that's your passion. That's, first of all, where you feel comfortable. That's where you soar, whether you believe it or not. You know, this world tells us all too often what we're not good at. You need to remember what you are good at, or what your philosophies are, where you really are comfortable. So I've been teaching this class for, I don't know, 7 semesters now. I have never had, and still don't have, the same 2 people get the exact same, even 5 strength finder characteristics. We've had some close ones. Last semester I had 2 students that got 3 of the same. Here we had a lot of you, when I say a lot, more than half, had the achiever as one of your characteristics, the learner and the responsibility, the relator. Nobody except for me had woo. That's usually not a very popular one. That is one that I tend to get. Let's see. You guys nobody got communication. Nobody got developer. Nobody got individualization, and those usually aren't popular. Nobody got positivity. What'd you guys think about this? Good, bad?
I enjoyed it, honestly. It was really nice to see what my strengths were and to be reaffirmed of those, because I already knew it, and it was great to see it on paper, and it was great so I could use that to help me grow and mold myself. Now that I know my strengths, I can continue to tweak those and make it something of mine to help me as I progress throughout this journey of trying to become an administrator.
Yeah. And was there anything that you kind of went, oh yeah, I am good at that? Like you didn't really believe it?
It's my first thing was an achiever, and I was like, yeah, I'm always on top of everything. I always get things done weeks, sometimes months in advance. The one component that I really enjoyed was it said that I needed a coach, and I had just finished talking to my principal about that, how I really wanted to be mentored and groomed a little bit more. So it was spot on.
Good. Anything that shocked anybody about theirs? We're quiet tonight. No?
Nothing really shocked me, but being in the last administrative meeting I was in, talking about future interviews and stuff, I think this information that we were provided will be really good going forward in just telling who we are and what we can bring to the table.
You know, it also helps when you're thinking about like building an administrative group. You know, if you're really big on, you know, the responsibility side, you may want to share some of those strengths, and it's pretty fun to find somebody who is the exact opposite as you. and to kind of play off of each other, because you will frustrate the living crap out of each other. But to kind of play off of each other, to, you know, that opposites attract. I mean, maybe in relationships, but I don't know in the work world, because like I'm very much trying to be on it, deadlines. As I get older, I'm like, I'll get that done when I get it done. I mean, sometimes you have to prioritize, and you have to say, when exactly is that due? Okay, I've got a couple days for that. But, you know, working with, I have 2 assistant principals that they could care less when things are done. Timeliness just does not matter. You know, that deadline for those observations are a suggestion in their mind. And I'm like, you didn't get it done a week before they're due. What happened? But they also, you know, finding your opposite also helps. The principal that I've trained under as an assistant principal and did my internship under, she and I are polar opposites. And we would frustrate the living crap out of each other. We one day had a knockdown, drag 'em out argument. Didn't talk for a couple days, only to find out that we were talking about the exact same thing. It was just in our different languages. And I think that's always good. It's always good to have that kind of opposite of, well, but did you think about this? Or what do you think about that? But knowing kind of what your strengths are, you know, those of you that were looking for your weaknesses, so everything else is a weakness. That's kind of the way it is. But it's, to me, it's very interesting. It didn't surprise me that a lot of you scored with the learner. You know, you are in graduate school. You are looking to have a new kind of role. There were some that I know surprised you all. I know, Grant, you talked a little bit about responsibility. That one surprised you a little bit, or you want to know a little more about that? I encourage you, look, I know you've all read the book, but I encourage you to read the different sections about the different leaders that are in what characteristics they embody, because I think that will help you to kind of see the adapting part of it. And some of you, you know, you guys kind of talked about, well, how do I know, like, how is this going to help me as an administrator? The person you know today is, if you are not in an administrative role, is not the person you're going to know when you become an administrator. I know that's scary to think. I mean, you're going to change. You're going to have your best self come out in a very strong fashion, but you're also going to have your insecurities come out in a very strong fashion. So you need to remember your best self. Hold on, my AP who's working ball games just called. Making sure I don't have an emergency, sorry. So you need to remember these. You need to think about how you can talk about them in interviews, because that will matter. When you guys were talking about your Strength Finder stuff, you also had to watch a video, and surprisingly, you all kind of liked it. I was a little surprised. But it talked a lot about building trust in others. Talk to me about that. You guys remember that? Hopefully that wasn't too long ago. Everything's fine, by the way. She just wanted to talk. It was the speaker who talked about Martin Luther King Jr. saying, I have a dream, not I have a thought, I have a plan. Here's my 30-point plan. You remember that one? Talked about how you can't be a leader unless you build people have faith in you. That makes sense? You remember that?
Yeah, I'll comment on that. I think I mentioned in our group video how that was a powerful thought to me. That trust was so strong that it turned into faith.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful for me. That's the biggest thing I took away from the video.
Did it
That
scare
people
you?
trust you so much that they have faith in you no matter what. That's just crazy.
Did it scare you a little bit?
Yeah, it did a little bit because it's such a powerful thing to say that you have faith in someone, that's how much you trust them. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of power over people if you're not careful, you know.
It is, you're exactly right. And some people can have it go to their head. You know, if you think about it, the trust and the faith that people have to have in you as an administrator is, think about all your safety. In an active shooter situation, they look to you as the leader. If you've ever had a student death or a faculty death, they look at you as the leader. Like, you're going to get us through this. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that in your career of either a student passing away or a faculty member passing away. That is one of those times that they look to you like, come on, Captain, get that boat in that slip.
I'll speak on that. That happened twice this year in our school. We had a student death and a faculty death. Our student death was before the Christmas holidays. So when the students returned, we were kind of dealing with that. And then we had a faculty death shortly after that, probably about a month and a half later. But our principal he's been at the school as an assistant principal for maybe like 6 years. And this was his first year as the building principal.
Mm-hmm.
And from the perspective of a teacher, I thought it was great that he spoke upon it. But the first time with the student death, I think he was a little bit too lengthy in as far as I would say being supportive of people. But the second time, I thought he did a better job because I don't think he held on to the grieving process as long. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if someone said something to him specifically about it, but I could tell in the students that they seemed to grieve a lot longer the first time because he came on and he spoke about it as far as in the morning announcements. And then they had an event. So it was just kind of lingering for a while. But the second one, it was, pretty precise. This is what happened. This is how we're going to deal with it. And we went on, but we went through the grieving process, but it wasn't as long because I don't think he let it linger as long. So I thought it was good that he addressed it both times. But I think that's something that you have to learn how to do. And you have to learn how to show strength while also showing empathy at the same time.
Those situations, whether it's student death or faculty death, are so difficult. They don't ever teach you that in graduate school. Sorry. There probably should be a class on that. As a human and as a person, you're also going to be grieving as that leader. But it's almost like you have to deal with it. I will say, unfortunately, I've dealt with student death, suicide, accident, murder, dealt with faculty death, sudden heart attack. I say this not in a negative way, but it's going to sound really bad. I've never felt so alone in those situations because in each of those situations, you're grieving as a leader yourself or as a person, but you've got to put on that strong face. You've got to put on that we're going to get through it. Yes, you gotta give them a day and then you've got to move on. I think one of the hardest things I've ever had to do when had a faculty member pass away is the day after she passed away. So the first day we were at school when the kids were finding out, that evening, I had to go around the building and take down all of the memorial stuff to her. Because the next day it needs to be school as usual. You've got to get back into that routine. Otherwise, the grieving process will continue. And that's what the crisis team will tell you. That's everything. That was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. And I was by myself, which was good, because I just cried my whole way through it. It's like I was able to read and laugh and look at what the kids wrote and just kind of get through it myself. But it can be some of the loneliest of times, because central office, the media, the parents, the faculty, everybody's looking at you saying, what do we do? What do we do? What's going to happen here? How is this going to happen? What are we going to do for the funeral? What are we going to do? You know, the family will be in communication with you. You really have to be able to compartmentalize and to put your feelings aside. But that, you know, when this speaker talked about the trust that turns into faith, I think about those moments when everybody just is devastated. They don't know what to do. They don't really want to have class, but this is the safest place for everybody to be. How do you handle it? That's when they look at you as the leader and say, all right, Captain, tell us what we need to do. Other situations when you get the wonderful phone call, hey, somebody just put a social media thread out on your school that they're going to come in with a gun tomorrow and blow it up. Crap, what do we do? That's when people look at you as that leader, and it's scary to me. I'm not going to lie to you. Having done this now, this is my 11th year as a principal. I think every day, who did I lie to say I could do this job? Because it is that the trust, the faith that, okay, you're gonna take us there. I mean, that's alive and well. But you'd be amazed at how you didn't really believe that they trusted you or had that faith in you, and then something happens and you think, oh yeah, they kind of do they do believe in me that I can do that. How you instill that in people, I wish I could tell you I know the magic formula. You know, I remember my first year as a principal, I thought, they're actually drinking my Kool-Aid and they don't know if there's arsenic in it or not. You know, they're like soaking up, doing everything that I've told them to do. But some of that is because they just don't, as a teacher, you just don't know any differently. I think we're just kind of trained to, okay, well, that makes sense. Some of it is you've got to build that trust in you in small ways. And it can be, oh, you don't like that county rule or district rule? Let me find out kind of why and try to help explain it to them. Or when you advocate on their behalf, or that's when that trust and then the faith comes. I always worry, what if it never comes? Have you ever known that leader that you think, Lord, if they go walking in one direction, you know, they're Dr. King, like, come on, let's go march over here. And everybody marches in the opposite direction. That's what I always worry about. What would happen? What would I do if that happened? I don't know what I would do. I mean, you're always going to have that rogue one or two that's like, I'm going to go this way. But, you know, I think the speaker does a very good job of talking about that. In some of the little videos, I think it was Tangi talked about her principal that's new that calls everybody scholars. When that you, Tangi, I think that was talking about that, and about how just his charisma and enthusiasm has made everybody like want to follow that.
Yes.
Yeah. And talk to us a little bit, because there are some people that weren't in your group, about kind of his philosophy and how it's just about like the scholars and how it's made everybody kind of stand up straight.
So he, at the beginning of the year, he said that we would no longer call our students scholars. I mean, we would no, I'm sorry, we would no longer call our students students, but we will call them scholars. And every class, every grade level knows when they're going to graduate high school and go to college. So we have chants in place. Any classroom you go into, he would go in, you know, he's an alpha, he's fraternity.
Yep.
He'll go in very hype and yell, "What year are you gonna graduate?" And the kids will automatically just jump up, be like 2021, 2032, whatever the numbers are. And I mean, that's from pre-K to 5th grade. They know what year they're gonna graduate. And calling them scholars, everything. You nest like a scholar, but you know, you sit like a scholar, you nest like a scholar, you walk like a scholar. It has changed the culture of our school by just changing what we say and how we say it.
I mean, just one title, instead of you're a student, you're a scholar, has changed the culture of that school.
Yes.
I know Marilyn talked about maybe calling her student scholars. Have you done that? Has it helped?
We're starting a new quarter tomorrow, and the last 3 weeks, starting with that full moon, has been crazy.
Yes.
So we will start in my 4th block tomorrow, particularly my 4th block, because they're pretty.
4th block is crazy too.
Yeah, they're pretty challenging, as with most of my classes, because they kind of, it's quite obvious they give me certain students, but so they're pretty challenging. And one of the things that they lack is the ability to just be a student, just following rules, knowing how to communicate, how to just simply stay on task, you know, just general things that you're going to need beyond school, you know, to be able to be successful. So we're going to start, you know, with that idea of calling them scholars and see if that kind of perks them up a little bit and, you know, give some confidence there, to see if we can, you know, make it through quarter 4 with a better grade point average. Because we went through and we looked at the class average, and we have a goal that we have to increase by 5 points as an average, you know, before the next test. So we're heading in that direction, but you know, they are challenging. They're very challenging. So we'll see how it goes, but
especially at the end of the day. Yeah, it'll be interesting. You know, some small changes like that. You don't have to make big changes. Small changes can absolutely change just the whole demeanor. I'm really bad with names. I'm the first person to say I am horrible at names. And so as I'm learning student names, and I've been at my school for 3 years, I'm still learning student names. Unfortunately, I know the first, middle, and last of all of the kids that usually are in my office quite often for not for good things. But just changing it, instead of saying, okay, Danye, I may say Mr. Folk, and he will step up. Dr. Wilson, Mr. Folk, good day. And he'll kind of look at me and he'll go, good day, and just kind of move on. You know, just changing that, calling him Mr. or Miss Pitts. The girls don't need any air. And she'll be like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, just changing and kind of speaking in a more of a respectful manner, they kind of straighten up a little bit. You'd be amazed. So, you know, just some of those small little changes and your enthusiasm and your charisma, I always say is why I think people then have that faith. And if you've ever met an administrator that you think, my gosh, this wet mop has more personality, it's hard for them. It's hard for people to believe in them and to do what they, you know, are, to buy what they're selling. As a friend of mine who works for Disney, to mop up what they're spilling. That's what he always says. All right, the last 2 things we're going to talk about tonight, case studies. So we've had 2. The first one was the parent concern about social media. You guys remember that? You had a whole thing of observations to do. And it's really hard when they're planned observations, man. You don't want to disappoint that teacher. Think about those that are teaching. You have like worked really hard to get this great lesson together and the administrator doesn't show. So this is quite alive and well and real. Parents walk in and say, hey, this kid was threatening my student on social media. So as the administrator, what are some of the first things you need to think about, which are not your observations, or not any of that? When you are with that parent, what are the first couple of things you need to look at or listen for? Clues. Don't all jump at once. Let's talk about First Amendment rights. Who'd you guys have for 603? Y'all are thinking.
Yeah, because it's been a while.
Summer.
I think it was Tillman. We had
Tillman?
3.
Was it Tillman? Jean? Okay, you remember First Amendment rights? Usually it's about the kids wearing like the black armbands through the Vietnam War.
Well, I mean, First Amendment support you to be able to say whatever you want, but without harming anybody.
Right. So what do you remember the phrase material and substantial disruption? Do you remember Dr. Tillman teach you material and substantial disruption?
It was probably in a reading long time ago.
in a land long ago. All right, so the first thing when a parent, and it happens at least once a week, comes in and says, this person threatened my child on social media. The first thing you have to look at as you're giving care and concern, oh, I am so sorry, let's look and see. You have to look at the wording and say, does it have a material and or substantial disruption to the learning environment? That is First Amendment in a school setting, because everybody has First Amendment rights. And just because students or the staff walk through that school door does not mean that even you as the principal or assistant principal that you lose your First Amendment rights. And in my district policy, actually, for walkout and boycott, it specifically says a walkout or boycott that causes a material and substantial disruption. So if you have one kid that walks out and goes and decides to squat in the hallway because he doesn't like something, as long as nobody pays attention to him, doesn't cause a material or substantial disruption. So when you're dealing with bullying, you need to look at what time was it posted. Was it during the school day? Was it in the evening? Why does that matter? If it was during the school day, why does that matter?
Because they were on their phone during school hours, which then becomes the school problem. But if it's after school, then it depends on, does it cause a disruption at
Correct.
school?
Correct. Absolutely. Were they violating the cell phone policy or the social media policy? Okay, it may be that they didn't do it through their cell phone. Maybe they got around the blocker to get onto Snap or whatever they're using at the time. So first thing I look at is the time that it was posted, the date it was posted, because it was posted on a Sunday in the middle of like school time. That's still their time. And then the last is does it cause a material and substantial disruption? So if I threaten Shannon on Snapchat, and it's on a Sunday afternoon, and I say, next time I see you, I'm gonna whoop your tail. And Shannon says, I'm scared she might beat me up. And I know it's gonna be Monday before school starts. Did the social media threats say Monday before school starts? No, that was Shannon's thought. It could be, well, that's the only time we actually see each other because we don't live in the same neighborhood, we don't ride the same bus, but that still was not implied. So you need to know a little bit of the law of your state. So in North Carolina, you have to have specifics. I will beat you up tomorrow at XYZ middle school during breakfast. That has a stated time, a stated date, a stated location. It would not fly in North Carolina if you said, I'm going to beat you up the next time I see you. The only way that would fly is if I actually beat Shannon up the next time I saw her. Then it would be considered premeditated because I stated it. Just because it scares her does not mean that it is a threat. From a school standpoint, you have to look at, does it cause a material and substantial disruption to the learning environment? So let's talk about what that may look like. So in the mornings at my school, students have about 10 minutes to walk around. Worst 10 minutes of my life, but they have 10 minutes to walk around and socialize and whatever. So if there's a harem of people walking around me, like a whole big crowd following me and a whole big crowd following Shannon, and then all of a sudden, oh, we're crossing each other, people are kind of backing up, people are kind of egging it on, that's a material and substantial disruption. If Shannon and I just pass each other, don't say anything to each other, or even give each other dirty looks, nothing. So it's very hard when a parent is bringing social media threats to you, and you will get a ton of them. It is very hard to look at a parent and say, I'm sorry your child was scared, but this is something that we really don't have anything to deal with. You can offer, hey, I can have a counselor sit down with both girls or both boys and figure out kind of what's going on. We can do some mediation. Never do parent mediation, never have the parents be involved, because you're getting out of that's out of your lane. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've had parents throw down in the middle of the front office after their children have just gotten into a fight. So you do not want to put yourself in that situation. I always tell parents, we do not get in the business of mediating families. We will mediate the children. Go ahead.
What do you do with parents who are very adamant about having their child beat up the other one?
You know, that's wonderful. I deal with that a lot. So I kindly tell them, you know, you probably are raising your child the way I was raised, which my dad said, look, I need you to exhaust all other possibilities, but if this continues, then you need to handle it to where they won't bother you again. But I then also say, but in this day and age, fighting is never the option. You never know what somebody's going to bring to the fight or who they're going to bring to the fight, because that's the way it is in this world. And your child didn't exhaust all other possibilities. That your child needs to exhaust all other possibilities, and that includes speaking to school staff about ways to handle it. Well, my baby ain't no snitch. That's what you also hear. I'm not asking your baby to be a snitch. I'm asking your baby to talk to us about the issue that's going on, and 9 times out of 10, we can solve it by giving your baby different ways to react to what maybe the other person is saying. You mean you're not going to call my baby, you're not going to call that other person in and say, why are you being mean to my baby, or why? No, we can handle a lot of things by just advising your child on how to react, how to interact, how to not stir the pot. So, I mean, and then I also tell the parents, well, even if you tell your child it's okay to fight, your child, our district policy says it basically says it doesn't matter who started it, it's who participates. So we always say at this school, if you participate in a fight, you are going to be suspended for being in a fight. It doesn't matter who starts first. It doesn't matter who throws the first punch, because 9 times out of 10, there was talking back and forth. It was stirred up somehow. It's who participates. The other thing we also tell the parent is, and your child will be charged or arrested depending on their age. Now, those of you that are not in high school, you don't really have to worry about that except for charges. But in high school, we had a fight today, 2 girls over a boy, heaven forbid. And the mamas had known about it for months. They knew it was over a boy. The girls are swapping the boy. I'm sorry, there ain't no man worth it, swapping back and forth to fight. And the mamas finally said, we're tired of hearing about it. Take care of it. So they took care of it in the middle of our hallway today. Unfortunately, one of the girls was 16. Guess how she got home? I don't know. She may still be in jail because she was 16. The other girl was a juvenile. They're both being charged. Sometimes they're not both charged. Sometimes one of them's charged. And so I tell the parent, if you want to get your child out of jail, or if you want to go to court with your child, then please encourage them to fight. Then usually I will get they're going to do it in the neighborhood. Well, it's still illegal in the neighborhood. I can't suspend. But then we also talk about, if it happens in the neighborhood and everybody's talking about it the next day, then your child can be suspended for a material and substantial disruption of the learning environment because of their not unethical. The name just escaped me because it's actually in our policy. But about their behavior outside of school that they have allowed to carry into school because they won't stop talking about it. Now that's a fun conversation to have with a parent. Yeah, your kid got in a fight yesterday, but because your child kept talking about it today and showing the video of it today in school, your child's now getting suspended because of that material and substantial disruption. That's a lot of fun. I just kind of tell the parents, look, I get it, but there are other ways to solve this. I also look at the kids and say, do you want to be 90 when you're applying for that job to be a greeter at Walmart and have to remember about the fight that you had in high school over some kid that you don't even remember his name? And 9 times out of 10, the kids will then choose not to fight. I've actually had a parent that I called and said, I was so proud of your son. He walked away and did not engage in a physical altercation. And the parent said, that's not okay in my home. And when he gets home, he's going to have to fight me. That's not fun either. When you're like, no, whoa. This was supposed to be a good call, like your child. So when you're talking freedom of speech, material and substantial disruption, I'm going to give you a perfect example. Had a new boy who moved from Pennsylvania. It was right after the Florida shooting last year. Posted on, I think it was Facebook, was the social media platform, that he was going to blow up the school tomorrow. Now, when it's like blow up the school, you don't have to put what school, because most people insinuate and understand it's the school you go to. He didn't have any followers in North Carolina at the time because of him being new. I didn't find out about it until I received an email from the FBI 3 weeks later. Yes, email from FBI. Like, I think CIS type stuff, CSI, whatever it's called type stuff. FBI emailed me 3 weeks later saying that it was reported from somebody in Pennsylvania. When they searched the IP address, it came back to an IP address registered to this computer that was purchased at this town. Then through their investigation, they found that the computer had relocated to North Carolina, happened to be Dad's computer, and that they have done a thorough investigation and do not feel that it is a credible threat. So I now take this and think, but this kid just threatened to shoot up the school, which was my school that he attended when that threat was made. Took it to the school district attorney and said, so what do you think? And she said, well, what type of material and substantial disruption did it cause in your building? Not a single one, because nobody saw it. She said, nothing you can do about it. Now think about that. This kid threatened to shoot up my school. And there was not a single thing we could do about it because there was not a material or substantial disruption done. It was done on his own time. That's tough. Like, as somebody who wants to get him, that's tough. So in this case study, the mom brings you this social media threat. A lot of you talked about and wrote about the victim and the bully. And that's a great way to designate between the two. Okay, the one that did the threat or is based on what you've seen. I will caution you, be careful automatically saying victim and bully, because that can insinuate sides. The other thing that you have to look at, if mom is bringing this information forward, you have to say, well, can I see the posts or the direct messages, the DMs before this? Can I see it after this? Because what do you think you're gonna find?
That happened at my school a couple weeks ago. The girl claimed, I hate to say it this way, girl claimed victim and said,
Alleged that somebody was going to harm her. Mm-hmm.
and that's also why her sister came to school as the parent and was saying that she wants to beat her and everything else. It was kind of like, and it was over a boy, of course. And then
Is.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was so cliche in this whole scenario. And the girl showed the messages, and then I got to sit with the other girl.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the other messages, and I saw that they had a fight off campus, and that was not mentioned by the other student.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so it wasn't mentioned that this other student was beat up outside of school the day before, and now she's claiming she's fearful.
Mm-hmm.
Both the girls happen to be, the only class they have together is my class too. So
Oh,
they had
great.
to be separated for the whole week. But it just shocked me that that student claimed victim when she was the one that stirred the pot and provoked everything.
Probably because it got out of hand. It was to the point where she didn't quite know what to do. You know, look, if kids are going to want to fight, if kids are going to want to do harm, if kids are going to want to steal, most of the time they will do it outside of school if they don't want an audience. When they do it in school, really for two reasons. They want an audience. They want you to break it up. They're worried that otherwise it might get out of hand, or they want other people to see it. So in this situation, yes, I would talk to the parent. I would get all of the information. You guys were exactly right. I would reassure the parent. We will look into it. If your school has a resource officer, I would also clue the resource officer in, because it could be bordering on that cyberbullying type situation. Then this is something that I probably would let an assistant principal deal with it first. As the principal, as the assistant principal, you need to clue your principal in, but you can start running with the investigation. There's nothing wrong with saying, look, I have a whole day plan of observations. You know I've got to get these done. Can I get some help? You can elicit some help. I would only do it from some other administrators, or if you have an intern around or so, or dean of students, somebody that you can also utilize your counselors. You know, when I was at my previous school where it was just two of us and we were running around like chickens with our head cut off, I would utilize my counselors a lot of times to do some of the investigating, and not really investigating, it's getting written statements. I probably would not have a counselor talk to the main people involved. I'd maybe have the counselor talk to the other witnesses and just ask them to write a statement. You need to make sure whenever you are doing any of this, that when you're interviewing people, you need to have a written statement written by the child. Now, those of you that are in elementary school that maybe the child can't write all that well, it's okay to have you kind of read it to the child and make sure the child agrees. When I've had to interview and deal with some low functioning middle or high school students, I've had to do the same thing, read it back to them and then have them kind of sign it. But you would be amazed at how many kids will change their story. So get it in their writing helps. They also, surprisingly enough, they will tell you things that you did not ask that really mean a lot. You have to make sure when you're dealing with your observations and your planned observations, yes, sometimes, unless I can get some help, sometimes I've had to throw the observations out the window and say safety or this is more important. Especially when the big B word of bullying is in place. There's actually in North Carolina a criminal law that is against school officials if you do not address bullying in what they consider a timely manner. Of course, that's not defined, but it is a class 3 misdemeanor, which is like the highest misdemeanor before felony, if you don't deal with reported bullying within what they consider a reasonable amount of time. So you have to remember that. But if you are able to make your observations, don't compromise the amount of time, especially if it is one that you have to be in there for at least 20 minutes or you have to be in there for 45 minutes. You don't want to put yourself in that situation to where you compromise the time and say, okay, I'm going to write this up, but I was only in there 20 minutes. I'm supposed to be in there 45 minutes. Because that would put you in a ethical situation with your job. If you get to the point of, yeah, I think this is just kids being kids, I don't think there's anything credible to it, we're going to kind of address it, maybe do some mediation type thing, you need to make sure you notify the other students' parents to just say, hey, had this brought forward, this is what was said back and forth on social media. You may want to just monitor their social media or realize that this is going on. I had a situation earlier this year where there was a group text message. My student was only one of the people in the text message. There were 5 total, 2 from another high school, 2 from a third high school. They all had somehow gone to school together at some point, but then were at different schools. And the group text message was an elaborate plan to kill a student at one of the other high schools. Like shooting, when they were going to do it, who's going to be the driver, all of that stuff. Definitely called the mother of my child because police were very much involved. Didn't even have to get the text messages off of my student's phone because there was a 6th person in that group chat that screenshotted every last bit of it and then turned it over. So, you want to make sure that you are not the only person with that information. You always reference your district policy. That, of course, is always in there. Your job as the administrator is actually to enforce the student code of conduct and all Board of Education policies. Did you not know that? All Board of Education policies. You sort of need to know what they are. Now, I don't know what all of my Board of Education policies are, but I know a good bit of them. Maybe don't know the number of them, but you need to know that student code of conduct by the back of your hand. And you need to respond back to the parents, and a lot of you talked about that. I always like to give parents a timeline, but I like to give parents a loose timeline. The parent will say, when are you going to get back with me? It's okay to say, you know what, I hope I can get back with you today. It may be tonight. It may be tomorrow morning. I want to make sure that I do a thorough enough investigation that when I call you back, I have enough information. If it's that kind of parent that that you need to get back with them that day, there's nothing wrong with getting back with them saying, I am still in the middle of the investigation, but I did want to let you know that I'm making progress and I haven't forgotten about it, that I'm working on it. Sometimes that parent communication is extremely important. You don't want the parent to feel that you have forgotten about them or you didn't do anything about it. You need to make sure that you keep some detailed notes. And even though I've been doing this a long time, I'm constantly reminded, especially when central office asks for my detailed notes of an investigation. Crap, my notes aren't that good. I've got to piece them together, especially if it's several of us, dividing and conquering. If you do find out that, yeah, the parent's child really did not do anything that you can come up with, the other child really is tormenting this child. If Shannon is tormenting me, and everything you can come up with is Shannon is just a big, mean, ugly person, and she is tormenting me greatly, and I am scared to come to school, or I am scared that I'm going to see Shannon in the hallway or whatever, is that a material and substantial disruption of school? Sometimes you think material and substantial disruption is big. You're disrupting a whole class, a whole grade level.
But it's messing up with that one student's learning, the one that feels threatened. It's messing with her learning.
Correct. Material and substantial disruption can be one person. That's tough. That's tough because when you use those words, material and substantial disruption, that substantial part, you're thinking, it's like the whole day or a whole class. But for that one child, it could be that whole class, that whole day. This type of situation, I hate to tell you, is only going to get worse. My suggestion is to move through it swiftly, yet with caution. Be thorough, and don't do it by yourself. Even if you're the only administrator in your building, call somebody else and just walk through the process. Help me, did I forget anything? I always say, who's going to be the other side or the devil's advocate in this conversation? Because you need somebody playing the other side. You need somebody saying, but I did it because you were talking to my boyfriend during, class change, or, trying to look at all aspects and not immediately picking sides or saying this person versus that person. You always have to sometimes we have to act it out. I have looked at kids and said, all right, hit me on my arm as hard as they hit you. And they look at me. I'm like, I'm not going to suspend you. I need to know, when you say it was hard, how hard was it? Sometimes I regret that, but, you sometimes have to get all those details, but don't do this alone. Do not do this type of situation alone. Any questions, concerns? I think you guys did a great job on this case study. Good luck. That's all I have to say. I love to hear me a good social media situation. Tell you what was not involved in this kind of thing is I had a student 2 years ago who got angry at one of my assistant principals, and really me, because I told her to kick him out of school. Facebook Lived as he walked off my campus and called every one of us every name in the book that you could imagine. But because it was Facebook Live that then is recorded, we were able to see real time all of the students who weren't supposed to be on their phones in school commenting. Oh yeah, she's a B. Oh yeah, she's all sorts of things. And we were able to state that was a material and substantial disruption, what he was doing, even though he was walking off campus, because of everybody else that was not supposed to be on their phones in school, but they were. And it also caused a material and substantial disruption due to the relationships that the other students had with the staff members that he was talking really ugly about. And then my favorite part is he walked over to Dunkin' Donuts, because Dunkin' Donuts is right next to our school. And that's great for high school too, by the way, and a marketplace Walmart. Fantastic. Those people were really smart. So he's Facebook Living at Dunkin' Donuts. And he was like, and Dunkin' Donuts has even banned me from being here. Well, somebody went in and told Dunkin' Donuts, and then he gets arrested for being on their campus. It was kind of like poetic justice. But you have to deal with that. You have to deal with somebody posting something about a staff member, about you. And again, you have to think about First Amendment rights, but a material and substantial disruption.
We had a situation with our sixth graders. A sixth grade student took his phone out and took a Snapchat of his teacher, but it wasn't his cell phone. It was his buddy's cell phone, and wrote something about how she's the worst teacher ever, drew devil horns, and then put like she was a bee or something with it, and then Snapchatted it and put it on the 24 hours where everybody could see it.
Mhm.
And the teacher's daughter, who's in middle school, got a hold of it, screenshotted it, sent it to her mom, and it made its way all through the entire 6th grade before the end of the day. It was during school hours too. So
Not good for him.
the kid got suspended, but
Yeah.
I don't think he learned his lesson because he still hates the teachers. But
Well, there might be a reason why he hates the teachers. Any of you had issues with airdropping?
Yeah.
Yep, that's a fun one. How do you track down who airdropped it?
Well, here's the problem at our school, and I was going to ask the question at your school because I'm familiar with your school.
You are. Mhm.
In the location.
Yeah.
So, been in a similar environment too.
Mhm.
At your school. But as far as like at our school, our issue, well, from the standpoint of I am very much a disciplinarian. That's like my big thing. It's quite obvious, just probably from just looking at my profile, that I'm like straight to the point, cut and dry. My face is the same. I get a chuckle every now and then, and I move on. But as far as cell phones, that's a big issue at our school because we have a cell phone policy, but usually the cell phone policy is not enforced unless it's a situation that completely gets out of hand. For example, very similar to Shannon, but on high school level, girl gets a cell phone of a friend. She posts a picture, shares a picture somehow and a video from another guy's phone. It gets around, another girl is offended, but it was actually her video that she posted anyway to share. It just got out of hand, and they suspended that girl. But then when it comes to things like airdropping and just general posts or being on your phone or just little random little tidbits, things that kids normally do outside of a school setting, in a school setting. How do you handle that from a standpoint if your administration are not, it's in the handbook, but everybody's not on board? Like that really irks me. That's like my pet peeve right now at our school.
Well, and I will say I have kind of the opposite pet peeve. The 5 administrators absolutely enforce the cell phone policy, but the 100+ staff members do not. And so until it disrupts or interrupts their class. And I had one teacher came down, this was maybe a month or 2 ago, and was like, I'm tired of this kid doing that. And I was like, okay, so what was the issue? Well, they were videoing me in class. Okay, that's a problem because they're not supposed to have their phone out. Why'd they have their phone out? Well, I let them have it out, but they're not allowed to video me. Well, you can't say, you're allowed to have your phone out, but there can't be conditions to it. You know, cell phones, there's going to come a breaking point, in my opinion. Half of the high schools in my district, they've decided that is a battle we're not willing to fight. That with headphones. Well, we're still willing to fight that, at least as administrators. My concern is, what if we have a fire drill? What if we have to do a lockdown and they can't hear us because of their loud music or whatever they're doing? The other thing that concerns me is that social media and that phone opens up, it's like opening up every school door to the world, literally, and saying, come on in. And that worries me from a safety standpoint, we've got to, we have to follow these privacy rules, but if a kid is like recording their class and then post it on social media, how do we know? I mean, that worries me in a whole lot of ways. But I would say 95% of my teachers don't think that there's a single problem. My cell phones in my building drain to where they are like at 0% battery life because we're in a 2-story, just metal concrete jungle. Yet my teachers have charging stations for their students. Their phone's supposed to be off and up. Why do you have charging stations? So I'm kind of battling the opposite thing there, Marilyn. You're saying your administrators are not enforcing the cell phone policy, where the issue that we are having is the teachers only want the cell phone policy enforced when it is impeding the learning in their classroom. And I have found that a lot of them want to use cell phones as classroom management tools, babysitting. Kids are quiet if they're on their phone. And no longer is it this way on their phone, it's this way on their phone, right? Probably one of the worst offenders, teacher-wise, we just had to help her with a gigantic cheating scandal. Kids taking pictures of things, airdropping it, sending it to each other, gigantic cheating scandal. All of a sudden, she realized why we don't want cell phones out, why we don't want that. I would say in your situation, you can do it a couple of ways. You can, as a teacher, have a conversation with the administrator, the principal, or the other administrators to say, look, we have this policy. We want to, my job as the teacher is to enforce this policy. But I find that when I enforce it, then all of a sudden I am made to look like a fool because I enforce a policy, but then it's like you are giving the phone right back to the child. Or you're not backing me up. I have your back because I am supporting your policy that's in your handbook or in the school handbook. Yet when I enforce it, I am not being supported. The other thing that you can do is just kind of work your own, I hate to say this, but kind of work your own rule of, hey, they're not going to be in my classroom.
That's actually what I do. Some teachers allow them to have their cell phones. I give them specific times in which they can have their cell phone, or if they work towards a phone break, they can get a phone break as a group. But just like random, you just take out your cell phone and you're just on your cell phone and texting and Snapchatting and whatever else. No, that's not working for me. As a matter of fact, a kid who was in my class, he was first day in my class, fourth blocker.
Those fourth blocks, they're fun.
Yeah, fourth block's crazy. But his deal was he wanted to charge his phone, and he walks in the door and he says, "Can I charge my phone?" And my answer was no. And he says, "Well, my other teachers let me charge the phone." And I said, "Well, I'm not your other teachers. So you can't charge your phone." So he says, "Well, can I go see the principal?" And I told him, "Sure, you can, but he's not going to change my rule." And I tell him, "You can tell him I said it." So, and the principal, they know me. They know I'm like no nonsense, but they don't deal with discipline issues from my classroom.
Right.
They never get right up from my classroom. So they specifically told the kid, "Listen, you're dealing with Miss Milton. If you didn't know, she's not going to bend. So the best thing that you can do is she'll have a conversation with you when you come back. You winning, because she's no nonsense." And I think from my standpoint, I've been teaching a lot longer than a lot of the other teachers that are coming in now. We have 3-year science teachers. I mean, our department chairs have only been teaching like 5 or 6 years. But just generally, I think it's something that is needed to also help support the younger teachers that are coming in. We have to enforce these rules to give them the opportunity to learn to teach, because they are so young, they can't deal with the cell phone issues as well as discipline issues of a classroom, because that brings a different layer to them that they're just not ready for.
Absolutely.
And that's like my biggest thing, and just the whole deal with cell phones. There has to be a point where there needs to be some consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency alone would be good.
I mean, and I've taken it to my school improvement team and said, look, let's talk about what rules are in this student handbook, because there's not a single rule that I've created. These were all here when I got here. So are we going to keep them or are we not? Because if we have this rule, we're going to enforce it. And my expectation is that everybody's going to enforce it. So, I mean, I just basically threw it out there and said, do you want to have this rule? By the way, here's the board policy on cell phone usage in the learning environment, which the board policy says it will not be done. I said, so how can our student handbook follow board policy and also be something that we all can live with? And they all said, well, board policy needs to be changed. I'm sorry, I'm not the school board.
Sometimes it makes it difficult because our school is a BYOD.
See, ours is not, thank God.
And it sucks. Our county has enough money. They don't need to be BYOD. Just give the kids devices.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm in Wake County, and they don't want to dish out the extra money for devices to be one-to-one.
And see, we have devices. In fact, my district, that's a whole nother conversation of one-to-one, but it's like Kleenex versus Puffs versus whatever. You can be one-to-one and have a Chromebook cart in a classroom, or you could be one-to-one where they carry it around with them. There's all sorts of one-to-one, but we have enough devices. They don't need any of that. Every child in every class can have a device. They don't need to use their cell phones.
Our county is 3-to-1.
Mm.
So, I mean, I would be satisfied if it was even, 2-to-1.
Right.
You can sit next to the person, you can type and everything else. But with a 3-to-1 initiative, and that's giving me 10 laptops, and our classes are overfilled, it's no longer a 3-to-1 anymore.
Yeah. And see, our district moved to Chromebooks because they're so much cheaper. And because all of our emails are the Google Suite, it all works. But our district also has made it, if I buy, like I bought $50,000 worth of Chromebooks, the county matched as much as they could. So they give an incentive for schools to purchase technology as well. So that helps. Marilyn, one thing I was going to say is that I don't know that I would have phrased what the principal said to that student the way the principal phrased it. I don't know that I would have said, well, that teacher, she doesn't play with things like that. I think I would have said, I don't get any referrals from her class because she knows how to handle her class, and would have been much more supportive of you, not necessarily, she don't play, don't walk into her class and try to get away with anything. I mean, that can come across like they're being supportive to you, but it's also like saying, she's the meanest person in the building. I've said to kids, look, I don't get referrals from that teacher. And the fact that teacher took their time out of their day to refer you, it must have been really bad. And I know this was a self-referral. But, I think as administrators, we have to be very cautious with our words. Because even though it came across as support, and the principal may have been thinking that they were there supporting you, what they basically said was, she's a big old bee, don't play with her, she's gonna go crazy, just do what she asks.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't necessarily supporting their own rules.
Well, that's true.
So just caution out there, be careful how you say things, because you may mean it with great intention, but it may come across differently. That's where you have to kind of have that reflection. You will find you will have phrases and statements and things that you will say all the time that you've had to work hard on to get to that point.
Well, this principal has to work harder than that. He's just him. So that's something I would say that he would definitely. I feel like he's supportive of his teachers. Mm-hmm. He really is. And I actually told my mentor the same thing, because she was talking about him, that, she really didn't like him. And I said, yeah, I know he's not always the easiest person to get along with. And, he's not always tactful in what he may say, but You know, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, he's going to support you. So I've had to kind of, you know, speak to like my mentor to kind of clean up a little bit.
You've had to have his back.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, sometimes things can come across that way and you don't mean it at all. But it's, you know, when you're dealing with student discipline, when you're dealing with all of that, and it comes down to the word of the teacher versus the word of the student. Number one, you have to follow the word of the teacher. You have to support your teachers. That goes back to that trust and that faith. Now, I'll tell you, some teachers want you to support them when there is no reason that those teachers need to be supported in their decision making. And that was tough. That's when you have that conversation before the conference, after the conference, ongoing. Look, we're in a pickle. I'm going to try to help you get out of this pickle, but you're going to have to help yourself because we're not going to be in this pickle again. That's when you have to have those real, just straight to the point conversations. I mean, I've looked at a teacher and said, look, I'm going to get you out of this, but you get yourself back into this, you're on your own. And they don't necessarily like that, but they also realize, look, I got your back once. I'm not going to have your back again if you keep doing the same stupid crap that you're doing. So case study number 2. All right, raise of hands. Fired or written up? Fired, written up. Fired. Okay, 50-50, just written up. Some people are like hands both ways.
We were kind of both. It was depending on the investigation piece of it.
Yeah.
We were, I think we were pretty sure because of the 32 plus signatures that he would probably end up getting fired.
Plus it was federal.
Yeah, it was federal.
Federal survey.
I mean, we went into the Arizona laws and everything, so.
Yeah, your group did. Your group researched, like, where this fictitious thing happened in Arizona. Yeah. It was, I'll tell you, it was, I enjoyed reading all of that. I really did. I know you guys may think that's crazy, but I really did enjoy reading all of that. What was the man's name? Juan something? Javier. Did anybody, and I think one group did touch on this, did anybody question, did Javier agree to go to the new school or was he moved to the new school?
He was moved. He was not, he didn't agree to it. He was told, it was kind of like a force, like you're going to have to move
Right.
to the new school. So that already started him on a sour note because he didn't want to leave his school.
Yep. And you know, you were the new principal at this new school. So you inherited a whole conglomerate of people. Some of them were from the old staff, right? Some of them were new people. Because I know one of the questions was, will the staff support you? Will this unite the staff or tear the staff apart? Well, is the staff really united anyways? There may be some staff members that are like pro Javier, but some staff members may be like, who's Javier? You know, we're just getting to know him. The biggest thing out of this whole situation is he definitely was being a gigantic bully to Rita, tarnishing her reputation. I mean, he just was almost like a sore loser. Like, hey, she took my spot. Rita didn't take your spot. You got moved. You know, Rita just was the innocent bystander that was placed there. You guys really did kind of hit it on the head about contacting somebody, doing an investigation. Whenever, just like with students, you need to get written explanations or, Javier, did you write these surveys? And if he denies it, then you know that he's lying too. You know, you've now caught him in a lie. Obviously, other people have told you about the mistreatment towards Rita. Maybe Rita has told you, Rita's principal has told you. You know, several groups talked about, is this arrestable offense? Do you notify police? I would say I would not do anything with this unless I had direct communication with my human resources department, or however that hierarchy is in your district, whether it's a district superintendent or whatever. You as the principal, and I know some of you said, well, I would make sure that my principal knew about this. Yeah, definitely. You know, I don't think you can ever tell your principal enough, even though there are times that I'm like, help me remember that again. I mean, I was dealing with a situation after school. They were just giving me a heads up. I was like, now, was she the one that the mama bought the alcohol for? And they were like, yes. I was like, okay, just making sure I have the right kid. So whether you are the principal or the assistant principal, you cannot make the decision to suspend. That decision has to come from a higher up. It depends on the hierarchy within your district. It may come directly from the superintendent. It may come from director of human resources. But 9 times out of 10, you will be the one telling the person they are suspended and giving them the guidelines of that suspension. It is always suspension with pay first, always. Even if it's 5 minutes of suspension with pay, and then with grounds, move to suspension without pay. You actually can keep a person on suspension with pay for 90 calendar days. But at the end of those 90 calendar days, a decision has to be made. They either return to work or they have to go to suspension without pay. So that gives time for that investigation. In my experience, unless there is some big reason that the person should not return to work, it doesn't take 90 days to figure that out. If a paid suspension goes 90 days, they're probably coming back to work. The other thing, that if you are the fund manager, you need to know how they're paid. I once had an employee that was paid out of my remediation money as Title I money as a class size reduction teacher, and went out on 90 days of pay. Guess who paid for the substitute during the paid suspension? The Title I fund. It took about 3 days, and my secretary was like, whoa, hey, they're taking the sub pay out of our pay. I immediately switched budget codes to another teacher that was of the same salary, put them as the Title I teacher, and he was the state paid, so the state would cover the sub. So you need to think about that. That's something I didn't even think about. But you as the school-based administrator, whether it's an assistant principal or principal, cannot suspend. That has to be of a board level. And really, if you look at suspension letters, it comes from the superintendent, but it just is carried out through others. Those are not fun phone calls you have to make or sit-down conversations you have to make. You also find, and it depends on how big your district is, you don't necessarily, in this type of situation, you may have to do some of the initial investigation, but in some of the bigger districts, they will send in investigators to continue the investigation for you, because it's not really dealing with kids. And that's nice. Sometimes you have to sit in on those conversations. That's okay. Sometimes they say, can I have a space? Hey, you can have my office. I'll go work someplace else. So when you're dealing with employee only and you're dealing with multiple schools, because Javier used to be at one school, now he's at a different school, you will find that some central office investigators will come in, or you will work in tandem with that other principal, other administrator. I don't notify police unless it's stuff that I have to notify police, like fights, sexual assaults on campus, thefts, firearms, some of those things. But like staff, unless I think somebody's sleeping with a student, I don't notify the police without being told to notify the police. You don't want to just put something out there and then the police have to do something about it, because all of a sudden then it becomes public record. You have to think about that, because police investigations are public record for adults. One of the question about will staff support Javier's reprimand, unite the staff, improve relationships at the school. You have to be very cautious because you can't necessarily talk to everybody about it. The group conversations about this one was very different. Everybody had great ideas. One was maybe having somebody from central office come in and meet with the staff to talk about, just changes and trying to get the staff back together. One group talked about, hey, most of the staff probably knows about it because you probably had to interview, 25 different staff members. Sometimes it's, hey, we're dealing with something. It would really be helpful if you guys didn't talk about it. Let's come up with some other drama. Did you know Luke Perry died of 90210 and, move on. Sometimes you have to redirect the staff focus because no matter what level, they will talk about drama. Some may be like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I've also found in staff situations, you may think, oh my gosh, this is going to be just so detrimental to the culture of the staff and it's just going to kill morale. 9 times out of 10, staff usually applaud you. Sadly enough, as much as that staff member is like, staff will applaud you. Like, good, stand up for them. The question was report the information to the superintendent. I can tell you in my district, I wouldn't pick up the phone call and call Mr. Booker and say, by the way, sir, this is what I'm dealing with. There's protocols in every district. In mine, we've got a chart of what I report. And then, like if I report something to Director of Human Resources, that's who I should report it to, he will report it up the chain. So you don't necessarily have to call the superintendent, but I know in smaller districts, it is a direct line to the superintendent. That is who you report to. So when you are going into administration, that's one of the first things you need to ask is, what's the chain of command for reporting misconduct by employees? Because and it depends on the misconduct. Like in my district, it depends on what type of misconduct, which way it goes. So definitely, if you are hired in your district or any other district, the first thing you need to know is human resource, where do I report it? If you're an assistant principal, you report it directly to your principal. The other thing that you have to think about is if your principal doesn't do anything with it, and I've already read some things on the third case study, you can't just kind of sit back sometimes. So, this kind of situation, it's not the kind that's going to land you in jail, but it definitely is a morale killer because if Javier is out bashing Rita, it's probably bashing other people. The other thing that one group brought up, which I didn't even think about, which is fantastic thought, is, hey, a lot of secretaries or receptionists are the ones that handle money. So if Javier is falsifying some surveys, has he done it before? 9 times out of 10, maybe. What else is he falsifying? And one group brought up falsifying the books. Is he cooking the books where he's making some money? Obviously this case study was about losing trust in your employee as well, which is very difficult. You guys liking those case studies? Have you liked them? That's new for 605 this semester. So I like them. I wish we had way more time to talk about them because goodness gracious, they're interesting. All right, just to give you an update of where we are, you guys, case study number 3 is not due until the 24th. Case study number 4 is due right after that. So I'm assuming most people's spring break is either the week before Easter or the week after Easter. Does that sound about right? So going into spring break, you guys should basically be done. Coursework as well. Week 13, week 14, I mean, we're on week 10 right now. Just started week 10 today. So we don't have very many left. And as I look at the assignments, you have some due for week 10, week 11, week 12, and then they kind of fall off. You have case study 5 due after spring break, and 2 assignments and 1 Zoom session. That's it. So if you can make it to spring break, your priority, if you have not finished your licensure stuff, is your licensure stuff. That, of course, needs to be your priority, but there's some things that you're working together with your group on. So you need to also kind of hit those meetings, okay? What can I do to help you? What questions do you have? We are Zooming next Monday. Actually, the next 2 Mondays. I see the baby crying. This. We're Zooming the next 2 Mondays. We're going to talk about some case studies. I love talking about different things that are going on in your buildings. So if you have something that you absolutely just want to talk about, let me know. Like, I could talk about cell phones, I could talk about headphones, I could talk about hoods, I could talk about passes, tardies. I could talk about all of those things for days. We can talk about social media for days.
Dr. Wilson, when is your spring break for your school?
It's the week after Easter. We have Good Friday off, which is the 19th of April, and then it's the week after that.
Okay. Would it be okay if I were to get intern hours at your school?
Is
Our
your
spring break is before to just
I
come.
always welcome it. Absolutely. Just let me know what, shoot me an email with some dates and I'll let you know if I've got anything on my calendar. My assistant principals are also used to me saying, hey, I got a student who's coming to spend the day with us. And then they'll usually take you to go do cafeteria duty with them. My assistant principals are kind of used to that. Yeah, if you want to shoot me a date or two, I'll let you know what things look like. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. Not at all. I know, it's kind of scary that I'm like an open book. Like, come on, have fun, enjoy it. We'll see. Like I told you guys at the beginning, I learn as much from you all as you guys learn from me. All right, remember, I'm a phone call, email, text message away. Whatever I can do to help. Okay? All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks for being patient and moving the time. That helped me. I had to go to the board meeting. All right, bye guys, have a good week.